Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another market analysis. I know I've been talking a lot about the economy lately, well, kind of forever, but I really just never expected there to be a specific update that was so focused in my own niche. So my last market recap was 2 weeks ago, but a lot has changed in those 2 weeks. First up, of course, we have the proposed introduction of a GE tax, which would bring in a new item and gold sync. That, of course, has affected the price of a ton of different items, and we're going to look at that today. We also have some brand new rewards that are being proposed for next, which have had a giant effect on a few different items. And because of all this new information, the market has kind of been on fire lately. So as always, there's a lot to talk about. And of course, before we get started here, don't forget to leave a like on the video. It helps out a lot, and it really does motivate me to keep going, making these recaps for you guys. Anyway, let's get started. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is the GE tax and how that has affected the prices of a wide swath of items. Now, the Grand Exchange tax is not only a gold tax, it is also going to be taxing items via a item sync that will work by buying items from players and deleting them from the game once the coffers have reached a certain value. So although this list is not complete, these are the items that Jagex would like to remove with an item sync from the Grand Exchange. There are a ton of items on the list here, but let's have a look at how this tax has affected the price of some of them. So this update came out on November 4th, and unsurprisingly, right after this item list was released, pretty much all of those items started to go up in price. That makes sense because if, in theory, in the future, some items are going to be more scarce because of an item sync, then their value will go up. Now, of course, we have no idea when this item sync is actually going to materialize. We do know Jagex is serious about it, but it could be a while for sure. For example, here we have the Occult Necklace, which before the item sync proposal was 220k each. And a few days later, it is nearly doubled. Some other items on the list are the Dex Prayer Scroll, which went from around 17 mil all the way up to 25 mil nearly, just in around 2 days. We have the Arcane Prayer Scroll, which is pretty much doubled in price already, going from 850k up to 1.9 mil, and is actually held fairly steady so far. Next up here, we have the Nightmare Staff, which has gone from around 17 mil up to 25 mil just in 2 days once again. So pretty much across the board, every item on this list and others jumped up after November 4th. For example, even though the Scythe was not mentioned on the list, there is an assumption that more items are going to be added, and the Scythe would most likely be a likely candidate. So even though there's no mention of change in the Scythe, it jumped up from around 390 mil up to 450 just in a few days, and has cooled off again and followed a fairly similar trend to pretty much every other item. So although the idea of an item sync has had a very strong effect on the market, I think for now, the actual update is just probably too far away to see any more growth than that. In the case of most of these items, the price has kind of continued to fall back down again, and I think the main reason for that is simply the timeline. We just don't really know when this update is going to come around. It could be over a year, it could be a year and a half, we don't really know. Just based on information we have now from the live stream and the update blog, it probably won't be coming at least until we're well into 2022, which of course at that point, once we get more information, these items are going to skyrocket again. On top of that, while we have gotten information that they want to sync these items, we don't really know by how much. What we do know is for each item, they are going to be picking a certain limit on how many can be removed from the game every day. That limit may be different for every item, and it's really hard to predict how impactful or unimpactful this item sync will be. Now, because a potential GE tax and gold and item sync is such a broad way to tackle this problem, pretty much all items across the board have followed this trend of jumping up on the 4th, peaking on November 6th or 7th, and then plateauing. For example, here we have Ancestral, which hasn't been mentioned at all, yet has followed pretty much the exact same trend. And one final example here, we have Dragon Claws, which pretty much followed the exact same trend, jumped up by around 10%, peaked on November 6th, plateaued a few days after. So although most items in the economy have seen a pretty strong week, certain items have jumped up way more than that, and that is because the GE tax is not the only big update to be revealed this week. So this week we also received an updated reward blog for next, which details the introduction of both the Torva armor and the Zarite crossbow. These are two brand new items that they released just a few days ago, and in the spirit of trying to keep the economy healthy, there are some mechanics that these new items are going to have that have pushed certain existing PVM items into the stratosphere, for lack of a better metaphor. So what items have been affected? Well, there's a couple. First, and one of the most prominent ones, the Armadillo Crossbow. So the Armadillo Crossbow was of course trending upwards like pretty much everything else was after November 4th, but somewhere around here the price exploded from 23 mil, it peaked at around 34 mil just in a couple hours, and has increased all the way to a peak of 40 mil, which means essentially it has nearly doubled just in a week. That's pretty insane for an item that is so expensive like the Armadillo Crossbow. Now, why has this happened? Well, there are two reasons. First, the Armadillo Crossbow is going to be a requirement to make the Zerite Crossbow, so they're tied together at a 1-to-1 ratio. You'll need one Armadillo Crossbow, and you'll be able to turn that into a Zerite Crossbow with a drop from Nex. That already would push the price of Armadillo upwards, but there's another reason that I think is actually even more impactful. The Armadillo Crossbow will actually be one of the best weapons to kill Nex with, which means not only is it required for one of these stronger new weapons, it'll also be one of the strongest weapons to use, which will increase the demand tremendously now and when the content is released. Now, a set of items that have experienced a very similar change is the Bandos Chestplate and Tassets. These items exploded with the next blog as well, and that's mainly because the tassets and chestplates once again are going to be a requirement to create the new Torva armor. You will actually have to dismantle them into Bandosian components, which you'll then use to create Torva. Now, interestingly, the chestplate actually dismantles into more components than the tassets, which means even though the chestplate was only worth around 15 mil before, it has shot up to around 21 mil. And tassets didn't go up nearly as much, which means for the first time in quite a while, the Bandos chestplate and the Bandos tassets are worth a very similar amount of money. Now, the chestplate went up so much more comparatively because you are going to get more components from it. Obviously, both of these items are strong, but for the sake of the new update, the chestplate was a much more efficient item to purchase with the sole purpose of dismantling. Another item that is seeing a large amount of growth this month, and I think is most likely related to the next blog, is the Elysian. Once again, on the 4th, of course, it did start to go up in price like every other item, but the Elysian has really had a good month, going from 850 mil at the beginning of November, all the way up to a peak of 1 bill 50 mil, which is a gigantic increase. And with Nex being one of the strongest bosses ever released, I think the Elysian is going to be valued pretty highly. But pretty well whenever challenging new content comes out, like the Inferno, Theater of Blood, the Nightmare, whatever, usually the Elysian becomes very valuable. Now, a few other items that have changed a lot in price recently due to, I think, the next update. We have the Dragon Crossbow, which is almost doubled in price. Obviously, crossbows are going to be good at Nex, so the Dragon Crossbow has gone up as well in tandem with the Armadillo. We also, of course, have the Armadillo chestplate and chain skirt, which has seen a larger increase than the average market increase this month. The Armadillo chestplate, for example, going from 22 mil up to 28 mil, that's a large increase. And the chain skirt going from around 19 mil up to 25 mil. So to kind of summarize here, in November, we have seen a lot more demand for these items, mainly due to update blogs, which have been proposing new content. Nothing has fundamentally changed about these items yet, but there is an expectation that that will happen soon, and that's really pushing the prices of a lot of things upwards right now, but specifically combat gear. The fact that the GE tax was revealed and new PVM items were revealed at the same time really has stimulated the market, and while I expect that to cool down a bit before the new year, Nex really isn't that far away. It seems like 2022 will be a much more jam-packed year than the year that just passed, which I personally think means this trend may continue. So anyway guys, that is going to be it for today's market recap. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Now before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to Sejuani's Flail, The Hybrid, Ocelot, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier. It means a lot guys. As always, thank you for your continued support. Also a giant thank you to Sir Rojas, Ryan Shady, Mexos, Base Titch, NDM001, and YoYoSub89 for all being subscribed at the RuneNet tier. Thank you so much guys, appreciate it as always. If you guys are looking for another way to support me directly, becoming a YouTube member is the best way to do so. You can become immortalized in all of my future videos, get access to a custom role in my Discord server, and get access to my video release schedule. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.